I hit rock bottom. For me, I wasn't anything. I was building myself up to be this husband and father and successful businessman. And now there's a big red X in my history, divorce, that thing that I had always dreaded. I used to joke with my friends, I highly recommend marriage and shortly getting divorced afterwards so you can find yourself.
The third culture is what emerges at the intersection between your culture of origin and the other cultures by which you've been shaped. Beyond Asian is a place for stories of global nomads with Asian roots brought up in diversity. Together, we explore the interplay of our pasts with our presents and our relationships with the multiple cultures we move in. These are more than conversations about Asian identity. They're portraits of whole people, what keeps them up at night, what their hearts long for, and the impact they hope to have on their communities. I'm your host, Sen Jan, a third culture kid born in China, raised in Canada, and currently based in Berlin. This series is a first step towards making peace with my own Asian background, and it's my hope that other third culture Asians will hear themselves reflected in our stories. Rock bottom isn't pretty, but for those of us who've been there, we know that in the darkest of places is often where we can face who we truly are and tap into our innate potential to heal and to grow. In episode 7, Hanmin Yang in Toronto shares how struggling with his Korean-Canadian identity and a devastating divorce led to the creation of a video-based dating platform to celebrate the Asian experience. Hanmin, welcome to Beyond Asian.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you.
So Hanmin Yang is the CEO of Alike, which is a video-based Asian dating platform. And we will be talking about that later on in the interview. But before we do that, I wanted to ask you, from the beginning, because your family came to Canada when you were quite young, from Korea at the age of 8, and you grew up from the age of 8 to now with a trip back to Korea in between. Can you start from the beginning of what you remember coming to Canada?
Yeah, it's almost like my life kind of begins at that point. And everything in Korea is a little bit fuzzy. And we move over here when I'm 8. We landed January 1st.
Wow.
And it was in the middle of winter. It was cold. It was a shock. And I think because it was such a change of scenery, my memory becomes more vivid from that point on. I was thrown into school in the 3rd grade with a group of white 8-year-olds that didn't speak Korean. So I had no way of communicating with them. And I just felt lost and confused and shocked by the whole thing.
So getting into school, grade 3, a lot of kids who obviously don't speak Korean, you don't speak English. How did you make your way through?
I really struggled, I didn't know how to talk to the kids, and we would go out for recess, and I didn't even know what recess is.
Yeah.
Because I don't know the system here. I don't know the culture. I don't know how things work. So I'm just following everyone's example and just following their lead. They would give us sheets of paper to do a test, and I'm like, what is this? I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And then the bell rings and then kids go out. And I'm like, okay, what's happening now? I don't know. What I did struggle with was still culture. There were a lot of things I didn't know and still hadn't learned. I remember asking my friends, what are you guys talking about? What does go out mean? They were like, oh, so-and-so are going out. I'm like, well, where are they going? Well, why?
They're going for a walk in the park?
Yeah, is it special if you go out together? And I'm thinking literally go out, leave your home together, right?
Yeah.
What is the significance of that? What does that mean? They're like, well, it means they're going steady. Well, again, literally, I'm taking this very literally. I'm like, what does it mean to go steady? I'm like, I'm steady all the time.
I'm not wobbly.
No, exactly. And I go out all the time. Every day I go out. To go to school, I go out, right?
I go out with myself. I'm going steady with me.
Yeah, well, sometimes I go out with my friends too, right? To go play and stuff. These things, the way that we spoke and how it's reflected in culture, they were new to me. And I struggled with that. And I'm like, okay. So it means you're dating? it means you're boyfriend, girlfriends. Okay, I understand that concept.
Right.
So if you go out or you go steady, it means you're boyfriend, girlfriends. Okay, I'm like, okay. So what do you do in Canada if you're boyfriend, girlfriends? What do you do? And they're like, you go to McDonald's. We're grade 5. Okay, just mind you, we're in grade 5.
We go get a McFlurry and a Big Mac.
Yeah.
Extra large fries.
Happy meal, right? So I'm like, oh man, okay. So how does that, do you have to pay for that? Like, how much does it cost to do that? I'm like, $7. Do I have $7? So yeah, it was an interesting time. I learned, but I struggled with it, but I learned and I got through.
So did you ever go out with a girl when you were...
Not at that age. I didn't even know how to tell her that I liked her. No, my first girlfriend was when I was in grade 11, I think. So 11 plus 5, I was 16. So yeah, like when I was in grade 5, 6, 7, no, I'm still scared of girls, quote unquote.
Yeah, exactly. Women.
Exactly.
Well, approach your fear by facing it head on, and that's why you started a dating platform, which we will talk.
Yes, it's all for me.
It's all, well, the most important things have to be personally relevant.
Absolutely.
I want to hear more about the way that you perceived yourself, the way that you thought others perceived you as you became more self-aware.
I really struggled with that. I failed to identify what I was and how I fit in. I didn't know how I perceived myself, because I was thrown into this thing. From the moment that I arrived, I wanted to find how I fit into this picture. Where is my place? What am I? How do others see me? And it was difficult because I didn't have a sense of self-identity of my own. So I think I relied heavily on how others saw me. And because of that, I put on airs and I acted bigger than I was. That was always on my mind. Like, what am I? How do other people see me? What is the right way to behave? And I think others saw me as some short, small, geeky Korean kid who's good at school.
And so that's what you became, or that's how you believed yourself to be.
Well, no, I was never happy with that. So I was always an individualist. So I never saw myself fitting into any specific stereotype. I think what I was searching for was an archetype, because when I came, the friends that I saw, they all fit into an archetype. And I was just trying to figure out, okay, then what is my archetype? I don't know. I didn't really figure it out. I think in the end, I never figured it out until my divorce. So, thank God for that.
Yeah. How was it to relate to your Korean roots as you were growing up in Toronto? Did you feel Korean? Did you want to be more Korean, to be more connected to the place where you came from? Or was it one of those, like, I kind of want to be something else?
I remember in the first year of university, I think I wanted to reject a lot of the Korean part of me to be so-called, quote-unquote, white, even though I wasn't consciously doing it. And I think there was also, if I had saw that, I would probably say, oh, that's not true. I'm not trying to be white. Or I wouldn't have even used the word white. I would have used the word Canadian. I think I labeled myself more Canadian than Korean. And I wanted to be more Canadian than... but yeah, there was that part of me, sure.
I think this is something that a lot of immigrant kids experience. I certainly had that. Like you, I didn't ever think, oh, I want to be white. Mm-hmm. But I thought, I want to be like the other people.
Yeah.
It wasn't a conscious thing of like, I don't like this part of being Chinese. It was like, I just want to do what everyone else is doing. I want to be part of the thing that they're a part of. And only later on, like even now in my 30s, am I thinking, okay, that is now what I would understand as internalized racism. But even that seems a bit too simple. Even that seems a bit reductionist, because we're inevitably shaped by the societies that we live in. I grew up in Calgary in a time where most of my peers were not people of color. And so it would have been impossible for me to not be affected by that. It would have been strange if I had, as a 6-year-old, immigrated and I was just like always Chinese, like I never adapted. Tell me about going to Korea when you were 19, what motivated that? Because that would have been between high school and university, right?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that. I think I might have been 20. I had just turned 20. It was after the first year of university. And I was studying film. And I was looking for a summer job in the film industry. And wasn't really working out. I was getting discouraged. And my father had suggested to go to Korea for a few months and learn the language because I had forgotten so much of it. And that's how much I, pushed that part of me away.
Yeah, I get it. Did you speak Korean with your family, or was it?
I always speak Korean with my parents. I spoke English with my brothers. But I came when I was 8 in grade 2. So I was just learning how to read and write, and my vocabulary is very short. So, when I speak Korean, I sound like a second grader. So he was suggesting that I go to Korea and attend Korean language school. And so I did for about 3 months, and it changed my life. It ended up becoming a rite of passage for me. I went to Korea, and before the program started, I spent a couple of weeks visiting my relatives and doing the tourist thing, and I struggled a little bit too. It was like when I was 8 years old, I struggled with the language and I struggled with the culture, so there was a little bit of reverse culture shock. I also struggled to fit in because I didn't know the customs. And it'd be weird because if I'm shopping and I'm just asking questions like, excuse me, ma'am, how much is this thing? Or where do I pay for this? Or something like that. And they would tell me about the thing that I'm buying or just make light conversation and I wouldn't understand it. A simple word like comb, they would say, oh, yeah, that goes, well, if you want to get that comb or whatever. And I'd be like, what's comb? Mm-hmm. And they would just look at me like I'm weird. Like,
like, what's wrong with you? You sound like you're a native speaker, but you don't understand this very commonplace word.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what toothbrush means.
Yeah, exactly. So then I felt like, oh my God, I'm not Korean. I'm Canadian. Okay, that's good to know. That's how it was. But you know what? I loved visiting my relatives, and it was wonderful because we'd sit around a table full of drinks and would be drinking and hanging out, and I felt like I belonged for the first time in my life. Mm-hmm. Like, this is what it feels like to belong, to be a part of something. I didn't feel invisible, which is something that I had always felt in Canada. I had to be louder or bigger. I had to seek out attention. And that's why I strived so hard in school. I was overcompensating, I was trying to get noticed. Mm-hmm. But I didn't have to do that in Korea. I just felt seen.
Tell me more about what aspects of belonging mean something to you. How does belonging present itself to you?
It's nonverbal communication. So it's hard to describe it. It's almost consideration. That word comes to mind. Like if I'm sitting around a table with a group of people and we're all discussing something, they're going to glance at me to give me an opportunity to
contribute your thoughts.
Contribute to, yeah. I never got that sense in Canada.
You felt like you had to fight for attention.
Yeah, I really did. I felt like it. And I overcompensated. What's funny, it wasn't until I was 20 and went to Korea on that trip that I discovered that, women find me attractive. It's not something I really experienced in Canada. And then I go over to Korea and, I hear all my aunts and uncles and their friends say it, oh, he's so handsome or whatever. So I didn't pay much attention to that. But when I entered the program, it was mostly women, actually. And, they'd be openly talking about how handsome I was. I was like, wow. It was a shock.
How did that feel? Besides surprising and different?
It was such a confidence booster. I was like, oh my God, I never knew. And I never felt this way. And I had the time of my life during those weeks. Because our entire class, we were pretty tight, so we always went out drinking after class. But at the same time, women were asking me out. I was going on multiple dates simultaneously. I was really busy because of that. And I gained this level of confidence I'd never had experienced ever. And that's an incredible thing. I felt unwanted in Toronto. But I ended up having a short-term relationship with a woman, and at the end of the 3 months, I realized the last 3 months has been a roller coaster, been exhilarating, but I have to go home because I realized, I was having an amazing time there, but it was because I was a visitor. I have to go back home, and I realized I'm not Canadian and I'm not Korean. I'm